Okay, this is Serial A, which is the first chapter in your tanker book. So you're looking at the tanker specialization course student book. Okay, you'll see that at the front of the book there. It's a student book, and we're opening on page 5 of your book. Okay, so this is just revising this first part of the chapter. So you've done the initial basic course or the basic course. Now we're looking at the tanker specialization course, the first part of the tankers. So the general description, first of all, there, or definition of tanks there, first of all. A tank basically means any shell, including its service or structural equipment. So a tank, as it would suggest, includes all the sort of ancillary equipment as well. These are a few definitions that we're just going through so that you're familiar, because they'll come up at various different points throughout the course of the book. And also regulations are set dependent on sort of sizes and definition. Is it considered to be a tank, not a tank, what size of a tank, and so on. So it's important that you're familiar with them. So when we talk about a fixed tank, we're talking about a tank that has a carrying capacity or a volume capacity of more than 1,000 liters. Okay. And it's the tank is permanently attached to the vehicle or is an integral part of the frame, or it's attached to the running gear, the frame of such vehicle. So there's an example. There's two fixed tanks there on your slides or on page 5 of the book. It's important there, 1,000 liters. Sometimes that can be asked, numbers like that can be asked in exams, but once you go above 1,000 liters, then of a carrying capacity. Now, remember, the definition of the tank is not related to the amount of product that's actually in the tank at any particular time. It's relating to the carrying capacity of the tank. Okay, so that's your fixed tank. Your home heat and oil delivery lorries, your road tankers, all of those are considered to be fixed tanks. Okay, a tank container then. Okay, a tank container is an article of transport equipment meet the definition of a container comprising of a shell and its items of equipment to facilitate the movement of the tank containers used for the carriage of gases, liquid, powders, and granules, and the capacity of more than 450 liters. Usually they're larger, but you can get small tank containers as well. So tank containers are basically the tank with the frame around it. They're designed specifically for lifting on and off the vehicle when they're full, and that's why you have the supporting frame around it. And that's highlighted there on page 5, just the sentence above the two tank pictures, the two tank containers is an important one. Tank containers designed to be lifted on and off the vehicle when full. Now, there's two different designs of tank containers. Okay, there's the ADR or RID tank container, and they're really designed and tested for sort of short or road transport and short international sea journeys, roll on, roll off areas where they're staying on the vehicle. Okay. If you turn over the page, then there's a higher spec of a tank container, and is commonly referred to as a portable tank, or referred to in ADR as a portable tank. Now, they're a higher quality tank, similar visually. They're similar to look at, where you have a tank inside a frame, but they're designed for longer multimodal journeys. Okay, turn over the page on page 6 of your book, and the second sentence there at the top of the page, it says portable tanks are generally designed to a higher specification as they are intended for worldwide multimodal use. Okay, taken off the vehicle, maybe put onto a boat or a ship, and so on. So that's your portable tank. It's a type of a tank container where it's designed to a higher spec because it's designed for multimodal journeys. You have the demountable tanks, which again, the difference in the demountable tanks, there's no frame around them, and they're designed to be lifted on and off the vehicle when they're empty. Hence, there's no frame. Okay, demountable tanks, you get them sometimes in bundles, like shown in that diagram on page 6. MEGCs, multi-element gas container, again, another type of vehicle or another type of tanks where they're used, where they're a number of cylinders or gas containers all connected, or tubes or drums or whatever, all connected together and through a manifold. Okay, you wouldn't see them as common in Ireland, but they are. Sometimes they are. There's some about breweries and that sort of thing that are used. There's a picture on page 6 of one. Okay, the multi-element gas containers. Okay, and there's a few pictures there on page 7 of the different types of. So the two main types are really that we'll be talking about a lot on the course are the fixed tanks like the road tankers and so on, and then your tank containers, which are either your ADR tanks or your portable tanks. Okay, we may touch from time to time on the MEGCs as well. There's some of the uses of them. Waste tanks there, that would be your fixed tank there. This is in page 7. Bitumen as well, again, insulated tanks. Pressurized tanks would be the likes of your gas tankers and so on. So that's just a few, a few different types of tanks there. Bitumen tanks, up 170 to 190 degrees Celsius. The waste tanks usually have an open at the back, a hatch at the back to help with upload. There could be tipping and so on. So you have different applications. You have your home heating oil, your fuel tanks, your petrol tanks, and so on. You have all your different types. There's some more definitions there that you need to be familiar with on page 7. A transport unit, when they're referring to the transport unit, they're referring to the whole vehicle. Now, if it's a tractor unit on its own, or a trailer on its own, they could be referring to that specifically. But in general, the motor vehicle without the attached trailer or a combination consisting of the motor vehicle and the attached trailer. So the tractor unit on its own is considered to be a transport unit. But if there's a trailer attached to it as well, that whole thing is considered to be from back to front is considered to be the transport unit as such. Okay. Vehicle, as the name says, any vehicle intended for the carriage of dangerous goods. Closed vehicle, that is a means a vehicle having a body capable of being closed. Okay, where you have rigid roof and rigid walls. Okay, your box van would be considered to be a closed vehicle. Curtain sider is not considered to be closed, although the curtains are there to protect from sort of weather conditions and that sort of thing. It's not considered to be closed. Open vehicle, as the name suggests, just a platform, no superstructure there. It might have maybe sideboards and tailboards. Sheeted vehicle then as well. Okay, that's again, you have a sheet over the top of it to protect the load. Tank vehicle, as we suggest, comprised of one or more fixed tanks. Okay, a battery vehicle, then any vehicle containing elements which are linked to each other by a manifold or permanently fixed to the transport unit are considered to be not a commonly used term throughout the course. Okay, the same regulations apply. Turn over the page 8. Same regulations apply in terms of tankers. Even if you look into your ADR books, your ADR recommendations, or your RAD or your AMDG regulations, they'll all refer to different types of tanks and how tanks should be tested and what tests need to be done on them, how many openings, what pressure they should be tested at, and all of that, how frequently they should be tested. All that's outlined in the ADR because the ADR basically provides recommendations on how you safely transport hazardous goods, whether that's in packages, drums, bags, or tanks, or tank containers as well. RADC it's shown there on page 8. Okay, so you have all your recommendations. We would have covered that on the initial basic course. ADR regulations apply from the point at which the goods are being loaded onto the vehicle. So generally with tanks, the regulations apply nearly all the time with tanks because unlike, let's say, drums or packages, they're taken off the vehicle. And then you have to take your plates and your placards and all that down. Whereas with tanks, you may have an empty tank, but there's still vapors within the tank or gas or residual gas in the tank. So that's still considered to be dangerous. So when the regulations apply unless the tank has been cleaned and purged. So purged means to be degassed. And you'll find, we'll look at that term later on in the course, but if you were doing work, for example, on a tank or whatever, you'd have to go and get cleaned and purged, get a purging certificate so that you could do a bit of work on it and so on. But generally, when a lot of the tankers are coming home with a empty compartments or empty pots or an empty tank, and it's still considered to be dangerous because there are vapors in there. So for most tankers, this means the ADR rules and regulations apply all the time. Fuel tankers are very rarely purged, still contain the vapors when notionally or nominally, sometimes they call it notionally or nominally empty. Okay, that's a term that sometimes comes up in the exam. So for containers and tank containers, again, you have to think, well, when is the dangerous goods loaded onto the transport unit, or when is it loaded onto the vehicle? And the ADR regulations apply from that until the tank container is taken off the vehicle again. Okay. For demountable tanks, again, the regulations, again, it depends on how much residue is left on it. But well, if it's a demountable tank, again, it's empty when it's the demountable tank is empty before it has to be empty before it's lifted off the vehicle, you know, but your regulations could still apply up until that unless it has been cleaned and purged, you know. Who's responsible for their page 9, that their tank container and so on page 8, but the beginning, this is like who's responsible for so like if you look at it from the point of view, the first bullet or the last bullet point in page 9, when you're stopped along the roads, the driver first of all that the authorities will work with, and then they'll work back up, well, who's managing this tank, who owns this tank, or is there an agent involved? So it depends really along the chain, but they'll start with the driver because they catch you or you're caught driving the vehicle, so you're in possession of the tank on the road, okay? And then if they feel that it's, you know, the next person responsible, say the tank wasn't tested or something like that, they will say, well, who's responsible for managing the tank? So that could be, you know, could be the carrier, or it could be a third party company and so on. So they work basically back up, and ultimately it's whoever owns the tank, whoever's the legal owner. That's the last point of that's the last you know, person that would go to. Okay, because the owner of the tank, now it has to be a person with a business in the state. The tank could be hired in from the UK, and if that's the case, then it could be an agent working within the Republic of Ireland, or it could be hired in from Northern Ireland, or whatever the case may be. Or you know, that agent then might be leasing out the tanks then to somebody in the Republic of Ireland who's responsible for managing the tank. So there's sometimes in terms of ownership or in terms of who's responsible, it can be quite complex, but that's the sequence they'll work on. They'll start with the driver, as the man says. Okay. Let me see now. Vehicle certification. Okay, so this is to do with inspection and certification, page 9. So basically you have your annual certificate of roadworthiness test for all commercial vehicles, which we're aware of. But with tank carrying vehicles or vehicles carrying tank containers, there's what they call an ADR certificate of approval. Okay, and that's highlighted there in the bullet point on page 9. So you have the certificate of roadworthiness, and then you also have the ADR certificate of approval, which all tank carrying vehicles or tank container carrying vehicles needs to have. So you send your vehicle in for a certificate of roadworthiness test, and then you also have to send it in again for a ADR certificate of approval. Okay, there was a vehicle certificate of approval for national transport only. When the ADR regulations came out first, they felt that a lot of the older vehicles wouldn't be able to be fully compliant with full ADR, so they sort of did a bit of a compromise there for vehicles that they didn't feel could meet the regulations, the strict ADR regulations. So they said, look, if they're only doing national transport only, then we can approve them that now. But that has since expired as well. But it's just to inform you of it. Okay, so as awarded the vehicles have passed inspection, the validity of the cert is approved shall expire no later than 1 year. The next approval term shall, however, be related to the last nominal expiry date if the technical inspection is performed within 1 month before or after the date. Okay, that's straightforward enough, and that's outlined there on page 9 of your book. Okay, so the vehicle certificate of approval certifies that the vehicle is fully compliant with ADR and is required for any tank carrying vehicles. Okay, You have a national transport only one, as we said there. This is on page 9 and over on to page 10 that we're looking at there now. Now you have different so the certificate of approval must be issued for the semi-trailer as well as the drawn vehicle. So if you have a tractor unit and a semi-trailer, or then it has to be issued as well. Original copies of the cert should be carried in the cab, and copies of the cert may be carried in the cab, but must contain a company stamp and a signature by the company director. So for national, that's a national exemption there, where they allow you to carry a copy of the vehicle certificate of approval, but it has to be stamped by the company and signed by a director. Okay, that's on top of page 10 there. And the copies, and the original copies, and if you are, should be kept in with the carrier owner for inspection. And if the authorities do a workplace inspection, you'd be expected to have them certificates as well available. Okay. Do the different types of vehicles, and depending on what it's carrying, but the most common one there is the FL type vehicle, and there's a certain criteria then that would be tested for when it goes into for the testing station. An AT type vehicle, then there's anything that doesn't meet the criteria, and then you have mobile explosive manufacturing units as well, which is a specialized type of vehicle for transporting explosives. And again, that's so that when the vehicles go on, the testing station will have a certain criteria that it has to test under things, general electrical wiring, battery, and the condition of the wiring, the condition of the connections and so on, the type of materials used for cab, distance from the exhaust, the fuel tank, speed limit, all around sort of safety, fire safety, that sort of thing, that they're tested under, Okay, the national transport, I'm not going to go in, that's on page 11 there. Look, there's information on that. That's gone now because it's since 2023. But initially when they brought it in for vehicles that were constructed, so you can see there at the top of page 11 an exemption, and those regulations allow ADR tank vehicles constructed between the 1st of July 2003 to 1st of July 2009 to be treated as national transport only tank vehicles, and for these tanks to be tested and certified by a competent person. Okay, the exemption has now expired, as all tanks constructed on or after the 1st of July must now be tested by an authorized inspection body in compliance with ADR. So the people who are doing the testing of the tanks need to be approved as well, to do the job. Okay, so that's just a wee bit on that. So that exemption is gone now as well, and there's just a wee bit of detail on that in the slides. Okay. So that's the vehicle certificate approval. If you turn over to page 12 in your book, you have an example of one there. Look, the vehicle certificate of approval. So that's a blank one to be populated. That's the back page, page 13. And there on page 14, you can see up at the top there, it says vehicle certificate of approval. Front, it says certificate of approval for vehicle national transport only. Now, there used to be a sort of a red stripe run through it, or a diagonal strip running through these, and they used to be different colors and so on to signify them, but like that national transport only one's gone now. Okay, so that's really the vehicle certificate of approval. Over then to the tanks, page 15. If you look at page 15, now we're talking about the specific tank itself. So there's each of the tanks need to have a testing done on those. And there's two types of tests, okay? There's the initial or the periodic test, and this is the top of page 15. And that's done every 5 or 6 years. And then there's what they call a leak-proofness test, and that's done every 2.5 to 3 years. The certificate is awarded to tanks that are deemed suitable and conform with the ADR regulations. And there's an aluminium plate goes on the tank with the details of the tests that have been done. INAB is the competent authority for accredited tank inspection body. So the people who are testing the tank, first of all, get approved by INAB. Okay. So for fixed tanks, okay, and this is more important, demountable tanks and battery vehicles, but remember the fixed tanks. The initial or the periodic inspection, or sometimes called the hydraulic pressure test, is done every 6 years, and the leak-proofness test is done every 3 years. Okay, in Ireland, the hydraulic pressure test is referred to as the thorough examination test. Okay. And the intermediate test and the leak-proofness test is referred to as the intermediate test, sometimes within the UK. So for tank containers then, because they're being subject to more abuse, swap tank bodies, multi-element gas containers, they're tested every 5 years, which is more frequent, and the leak-proofness test is done every 2.5 years. Okay, so just remember that. That's important there on page 15. Fixed tanks is every 6 years for the full test, the thorough examination test, and every 3 years for the leak-proofness test. Okay, for tank containers lifted on and off the vehicle when they're full, you're talking 5 years for the full test and 2.5 years for the leak-proofness test. Okay. If the safety of the tank or its equipment has been impaired in any way, you might have to send it in for an exceptional test as well. Okay, and that will go through, so you'll be issued with the cert for that as well. So tank records then must be all kept by the tank operator, and they must contain the certificate, the documents or any certificate that they have with them, and they have to be given to the competent authority then if they request it. And they must be kept throughout the lifetime of the tank, and highlight that 15 months after the tank is taken out of service. There's a few examples there in your book, what page is that? Page 16, page 17, page 18, okay, and then page 19 just shows you the information that's on the aluminium plate on the vehicle, okay. Now you can see that in page 19. The two important things that I want you to remember is if there's a small UN on it, like it's showing up in the top left-hand corner, and there's a red ring around it, okay, that means it's a UN approved portable tank. It's a portable tank, okay. So that's the higher spec tanks. You remember, it's a tank container. If it's a port, it's designed for multimodal journeys. Okay, and down, if there's an S there on the right hand side, you can see it there in your slide. If there's an S there, that means that the plate, if it's present, the plate markings when the shell is divided by surge plates into sections of not more than 7,500 liters. Okay, it is present when the shell is divided by surge plates into sections of not more than 7,500. Now, remember the 7,500, will be coming to that later. But these are markings now, and again, as a red writing on page 19 said, don't confuse with ADR tank containers. These are the higher spec, the portable tanks, where you get the S on it, where it's telling you that there's surge plates on there, and there's UN to signify that it's an approved portable tank. Okay, so we saw that there's a short video there in the video section, the tanker video section, which you can watch, which will be shown in the course. You can go back and watch it again. It's called The Transport of Dangerous Goods by Road. Very interesting. Okay, turn over the page 20 then, just in terms of when do you need to do the tanker specialization course as opposed to the packages. The two cutoff points are for fixed tanks, and I want you to highlight, it's highlighted there in your book, page 20. For fixed tanks, if the capacity exceeds 1,000 liters, then you need the tanker specializations on your ADR driver training certificate. So you have to do the extra course. If you're driving any sort of tanks that have a capacity, now remember, it's not about the amount of product carrying, it refers to the capacity. Tank containers then, and the cutoff point for the tank containers, if you have an individual capacity of any tank container exceeding 3,000 liters, then you need to have your ADR tanker specialization. Okay. Now, when they say, remember, it's important there that you note that it's the individual capacity exceeding 3,000 liters. Individual capacity. You could have three you could have three tank containers on the back of the vehicle, and them all 2,000 capacity each, and you could have maybe up on 6,000 of product in across the three of them, but you wouldn't come onto tankers, and that would be you'd be happy enough with your initial basic course, or your initial basic certificate. Whereas if you have one tank container on there and it's above 3,000 liters, say you have a 4,000 or 4,500 liter tank container, then you're into tanker specialization, then so you need your tanker cert then. Okay. So you know this course is about roughly about a day and a half, and it follows the course on the initial basic. Okay, and we'll be looking at things like behavior of the vehicle on the road, movement of the load, specific requirements of the vehicle, looking at different filling and discharge systems over the next day or two. How the things like vehicle certificate of approval, how the markings and placards and orange plates and that sort of thing change. Okay, it's a responsibility for the employer to ensure that the driver receives the proper training. So training is a responsibility of your employer. Okay, that completes that section. That brings us up to page 20 of your book. And then we'll be covering the for section B from 21 on the next video. Thank you.